Hello. Next session is going to be chaired by Dr. Hasan Jawaid Khan. Hasan Jawaid Khan is the editor of Science Reporter, the popular science monthly magazine published by the National Institute of Science Communication and Information Resource, CSIR, New Delhi. He is also the editor of monthly CSIR newsletter, CSIR News. He has to his credit over 500 articles, news reports, and book reviews in English and Hindi, published in various magazines and newspapers. He has delivered around 100 radio talks on scientific topics in Hindi, English, and Urdu, has also authored radio scripts. He is the author of 4 books, co-author of 10 books, and editor of 12 books on various scientific topics. He was awarded the National Science Popularization Award by the Indian Science Writers Association in 2000. I welcome Dr. Khan.
Let me first begin by thanking Niyas, Professor Ramurthy, and Pallav for inviting me here for this wonderful venture. This session, this last lecture-based session of the 2-day seminar, has a very interesting blend of topics, starting from asking the most basic question, how do we make science fun? And ending with a talk on the most modern, supposedly cool way of communicating science. In between, we have 2 science journalists, experienced science journalists, talking about challenges in science journalism and the role of internet as a media option. We set the ball rolling by inviting Mr. Arvind Gupta, who has made making science toys his passion, his mission in life. He has been designing toys for the past many years, and these are made from very low cost materials, often material that we discard as trash. He is an IIT Kanpur alumnus, has written 20 books on science activities, translated 150 books, has presented 125 films on science activities on Doordarshan. His first book, Matchstick Models and Other Science Experiments, was translated into 12 Indian languages. He has received several honors, the first NCSTC National Award for Science Popularization Amongst Children in 1988, Distinguished Alumnus Award of IIT Kanpur, Indira Gandhi Award for Science Popularization, and the Third World Academy of Science Award. I invite Mr. Arvind Gupta.
Good for me. He was my teacher in IIT Kanpur. In 1972, he invited a person called as Anil Sadgopal. His colleague in in the US did Anil Sadgopal for a talk in IIT Kanpur, and I was a backbencher listener. Anil Sadgopal did a PhD from Caltech and was a molecular biologist, worked in the TIFR with Ubaid Siddiqui. Those 1970s were very different times. There were all kinds of movements. There was the civil rights movement in the USA, the anti-Vietnam movement. In India, we had the Jayaprakash Narayan movement, the Naxal movement. And whenever there is a political churning of society, a lot of social energy is released. During the national movement, at Gandhi's call, thousands of people chucked their very well-paying jobs and jumped to the national fray. Now, this was the kind of inflection point. In 68, there were the students out on the streets of Paris, and many scientists were trying to discover a more meaningful role for themselves. Many swore not to make bombs, but to find something meaningful for themselves. And Anil Sadgopal was one of those who in 1970, he left his job and started on the famous Hoshiangabad science teaching program. Perhaps the most sustained activity-based program after independence. This program started with 16 schools, spread to 1,500 schools. In 78, I took a year off from my job in Tata Motors and went to the HSTP. And one thing which I decided was that I was there for a year, that I just went to the village bazaar, the hut, and bought one specimen of everything which was available. There were small trinkets, some bangles, some mirrors. And when I was getting my cycle inflated, I saw this cycle valve tube. Now, this appeared to me to be a very potential material. If someone asked me what would I use it for, I wouldn't have an answer at that time. But I'm a tinkerer at heart, always making things, doing things, breaking things. And well, if you take a matchstick, two matchsticks go in very easily, and you make a flexible joint of two. And with this, you can start teaching angles. What's an acute angle, a right angle, obtuse angle? This is like a flexible coupling. You can transmit drive at any angle with this. And right from 0 degrees to 3 degrees, you could depict any angle. If you had three of them, loop them together, you made a triangle, you made a square, you make it a pentagon, a hexagon, all these two-dimensional shapes. And there's some very special properties. Suppose you look at the hexagon, these are flexible joints. If you pull this, it becomes a rectangle. If you give it a push, it becomes a parallelogram. And this is like an amoeba, which is constantly changing its outer profile. The square, it may look very square and prim. Give it a push, it becomes a rhombus. It becomes a kite shape. But then you give a child a triangle, and no matter what she does, you can't do a thing to a triangle. Now, this is the basic principle of triangulation, which children could in a very accessible manner, hold the concept in their own hands. And we're talking about, and then you could push a third matchstick inside the joint of two, you make a joint of three, a T joint. If you put all the three legs of the tripod in the triangle, you get a very nice tetrahedron. You can make 3D shapes, and with these, you can make, if you take a pyramid, you could put this on top of a cube, and you make a small house. Now, all the elements of a great mechano. You could make joints of 6, you could make joints of 12, you could make an icosahedron, you could make an octahedron. The children could put 4 marbles inside, and inside there is an orange bead, and could simulate the molecular structure of methane. And matches na ho to ghar mein chulha na jale. If there was a mechanical contraption which is made in roads in all our villages, which is the bicycle. So one is not talking about fancy material. And now this was heady for me. I was 25 years old. The first month, I thought this is much better than making trucks. And so this is much more, life is fun. I think all life is play. And this is, I've been into it playing all my life. And I'm just going to give you a little glimpse of what I do. Now this is a pump. And we have 31 pumps on our website. And if you can inflate a balloon with a pump, it's an ISO certified pump. All right. You can actually pop the balloon. And it's just based on a chance discovery. There's a film can, and which goes into old bicycle tube. And what I've done is just made a small valve, and you can see this valve over here. Here's a small flap which can open and close. And there's another delivery valve over here. So there are no glass pots, and if children open it, they will never forget as to how a pump works. And a very, very nice pump. I'll show you another very simple pump, and which is you just take an ordinary straw and just poke a broomstick in the center. Leave about 2 finger widths, make a half cut to the right, another half cut to the left. So both these arms can swivel, you bend them, make a triangle, and tape like a belt. We've used red tape, otherwise the transparent tape would not be visible. And this is a 2-minute toy, but this is extraordinary. It's an amazing sprinkler. Professor Kakotkar was earlier the chairperson where I work in Ayuka. Professor Banerjee is now the new chairperson. Professor Kakotkar is very fond of us, and he visited us, and he said if the Iranians had the centrifuge, it would send a chill down the spine of the Americans. So it's a very, very nice. Imagine children of class 2, class 3, sprinkling water, watering pots. First elements of science should be great fun. Children should be addicted to science. I wish there were more writers and poets and artists, because many of these scientists have also made bombs and missiles, which I hate. My website is just full of anti-war books and books on peace. And one of the only nuclear scientists who's also a peace activist is actually a Pakistani, the great Parvez Hoodboy, who invited me, and I went to 40 schools in Pakistan. But a nuclear scientist who's a peace activist. Before I go any further, I must show you, this is a slate meant for blind children. These are strips of Velcro, which are millions of nylon hooks. So this is my slate, and this is basically a wool dispenser. It's like a fishing line. If I crank the handle, you can see that all the wool gets wrapped up, and wool has a lot of fibers, so any blind child can just draw with this. And then the child can actually feel what they have drawn. There are 13 million blind children. Imagine the population of Mumbai, and that's the extent of blindness in this country, which is more than the population of many, many countries. And this slate is being used not just in our country, in every blind school, but many, many places across the world today. It's a very appropriate design. No multinationals. All you need to buy is the Velcro, the rest is all jugaad. Jugaad is some word which India has given to the world. Very amazing. And you crank the handle and all the ink goes back into the cartridge. Well, as part of the Hoshangabad science, one of the, like Nehru had a dream of putting a microscope in every school. This is the Nehruvian dream. Add to it a motor, electric motor, because life would come to a standstill without electric motor. If you were to make a list of the motors which you use in your house, it's in the mixie, it's in the washing machine, it's in the fan, it's in the cooler, it's in the fridge. Everywhere the motor drives the pump which puts water in the overhead tank. But no child ever makes a motor, which is the irony of this country. The mutilation of science teaching, despite the NCRTs and the SCRTs and the mega institutions, which we talk about. And this is a very, very simple motor. The most expensive thing in this motor is the battery, which is about 20 rupees. If you have the battery, it costs 5 rupees and 10 minutes to make it. Lakhs of children have made this motor. And once you make this motor, all of Faraday's laws which you've mugged up and you spit out in the exam and you comprehend very little, they just fall into place. This is not a rich man's game. This is not for the elite schools or the IB schools. This is for ordinary schools. Very amazing. Children can just spend 6 months doing all kinds of experiments with the motor. If I bring another magnet on top, what would happen? It would depend obviously on the polarity. If you bring a similar pole on the top, it would slow down. If you bring opposite pole, it would speed up. Take a wire which is double the length, thicker, change this gap, add another battery. All kinds of things kids can mess around with, and they would have a very good feel as to what a motor is. Well, the motor is now, the more recent thing is this. Now, medical technology throws a hell of a lot of junk. We live in a world of junk, production of junk. Now, this is a old syringe. These are strong neodymium magnets. They all come from China because China sits on the largest reserves of rare earths, and they're sitting put on it. And they go very easily, very loosely into a syringe, and you can just put it's like a rubber stopper, 1,000 tons of insulated copper wire, 36 gauge, very thin. Otherwise, it would be a short circuit. You need insulated copper wire, and the ends are scraped and attached to LED. Half an hour from start to end. And if I just move the magnets to and fro, and this is what I get. Imagine a child in a poor village in Bihar. If a girl makes a torch like this, a generator like this is how all generators in the world work. It's a paradigm shift. I'm no more a consumer. Today I've been able to light a LED, tomorrow I'll light my village. But we need to get this kind of a science into this. Lakhs of children. We have a film. I have a website called arvindguptatoys.com, and we put in 4,400 films in 18 languages. We work in a room which is 400 square feet, funded by the Tata Trust for the last 10 years, and every day there are 50,000 children who view our films. Day before yesterday, when I started from Pune to Bangalore, was a very auspicious day for us. We just crossed the 30 million viewership mark in 5 years. And this is, you're talking about role models. We don't have a role model in this country or anywhere in the world. 5 years in a row, we went to South Africa. South Africa, there is a company called Sasol. The Tatas are paying $10 billion to buy Sasol technology. They convert coal into oil, and there's money in there because oil is cash. Sasol organizes the biggest science fair in the whole of the African continent, and every African country is over there. 600 international workshops. The Brits are there, the French are there, the Finns are there, and they evaluate every workshop. 5 years in a running, we have won the most distinguished workshop award. And what we do is we take a DVD as part of this. This DVD, anyone who wants can write to me. I would send this to you free. This is copyright free. It's copy left. There are 900 ebooks, passionate books on science and education in this. 200 short videos. How do you make the motor? How do you make the matchstick models? How do you make this? How do you make that? And there are 7,000 photographs. And this is absolutely free share. So we take 200 of this and give it to every African who comes from any country. And today, in the last 5 years, they're doing their rounds in every African country. And I think this is one way, very, very, very cost-effective way. It costs 12 rupees to duplicate a DVD like that. There are no commercial interests. And as a matter of fact, many people have started earning their livings. There are two young people who are going to speak. Yesterday they said that we use all your toys, and I feel very happy. It's a great honor. Someone said that there is an outreach program in the ISC Bangalore, and they use all your toys, and I feel doubly happy about that, because it's meant for this. Our lives are very short, and we must do something very meaningful in our lives, because before we can fool the world, but never our own souls, and we must do good things, and leave it for posterity in the public domain. There's another toy which I want to show you. And this is a levitating pencil. Here's a piece of rubber with 4 magnets, you can see. These ring magnets all come from China. The front ones attract, so they're north-south. The rear ones repel. And if I just put it's a piece of CD, and it spins, it levitates, and it writes. There's a girl, her name is Hamsa Padnaban, daughter of Professor T. Padnaban, the brightest physicist in Ayuka. She was in the high school, went to no fancy school, but the Kendriya Vidyalaya across the road. Hamsa was fascinated by this, wrote a 12-page paper on this. She was lifted from India to Seattle, 2nd Intel International Award. Now this is the potential of every girl in this country. 5 years down, you can just Google Hamsa Padnaban. A minor planet is named after Hamsa. Now this is the potential of every girl in this country. We need to give them choices, not the shit we have been teaching them into schools. How many years children spend learning just about nothing? So many brains in the drain, absolutely. Well, we use a lot of, this has been there for the last 100 years. It's intrigued. This is the darling of every physicist. You take a pencil with a rubber on one end, a couple of notches over here, a fan, a loose fan, you can just see. Here is a refill in my hand. If I rub this, something amazing happens. Non-trivial physics, 6 major research papers on this. As a matter of fact, Feynman, when he was very young, was quizzed by this. He wrote a paper on this. That's why you'll never find the NCRT or the DST books. Because there are no 3 or 4, probable answers where you put a dot. It's very, very amazing. And every child must, because if the teacher is breathing down your neck, you should be writing. But if the teacher looks the other way, every child should be doing like this, because God sent them in the world to play, not to suffer a bunch of idiots. Right? That's what you should be doing. People say, why the hell are you teaching this? This is not part of the curriculum. This is not the NCRT curriculum. It's not in the NCRT curriculum. All curriculums are political, are very narrow. Never stick to curriculums. All curriculums anywhere in the world are political and narrow. We must broaden our minds. The task of education is not to stick to curriculums. We have a way out. Is this part of the curriculum? We ask them. There's a counter question. Now this is a disc with 7 colors, very well known as the Newton's disc. Have you done this? Of course, there's not. Now, this is such an amazing toy. The disc spins very fast, all the 7 colors coalesce, you can see a grayish-white. It need not be all science. And I think the twain between science and art must meet somewhere. This is designed by the person who is part of the cleaning staff in my center. His name is Shivaji Mane, a Dalit, but amazing man. This is just a spiral. You wind on a pencil, pull it out, the spring to make a spiral, and these are pieces of cut straw. And they look like a moving rainbow, very, very beautiful. Well, this is a bow and arrow, and you can see that it's a parrot on one side, a cage on the other, but this makes it much more interesting. I just give it half a turn, there is a twist over here. Now, it's just, the thread is just going around the refill and coming. Now, right now you see the cage, now the bird, the cage and the bird. If you do it fast enough, you see the bird in the cage. If you're not interested in science, I think it's not the end of the world. It's a very nice mixing machine. Churn curds and make buttermilk. Well, we use a lot of, all our old newspapers and magazines, we cut into squares. And if you take a square, there's a big triangle, and this is a small triangle. And if I just tear this, and I just fold this, what I get is a very nice rabbit. Rabbit's mouth, rabbit's long ears, front legs. Hold this over here, and it's a 10-second toy. And because it's dynamic, and children have made this for hundreds of years. All the Barbies and the He-Man and the Skullman, these very sexist, violent toys, are unsustainable. But 100 years, 10 years down, I might not be in the world, but I think kids would still be making a toy like that. Well, this is documented for the last 300 years. Again, take a piece of square paper, and kids have been making this bird. It's a flapping bird. This is documented because origami is dovetailed into the Japanese religious rites. The whole family sits and folds paper, and just a square piece of paper in your 10 little fingers, and you make something alive. And what we did many years back, this is the same Japanese piece of wood, and put a fantail. It's a refill with a pin rotating. Now this is a fantail bird. Don't throw away all refills. You could make 10 birds like this. You don't have to go to X mall or Y mall to buy great toys. It's matter to be surprised that 150 of our films have been dubbed into Chinese. And there is an NGO in China which is dubbing our entire website into Chinese. So it need not be, everything should not be full of skirmishes. We can learn from each other. We can share from each other. No one has a monopoly to all knowledge. Another wonderful thing with the straw. This is a spinner, a fat straw with tape on both the ends. Nip the right corner to the top and the left corner to the bottom. And here is a straw with this hole. If I just shut this hole, air would come out at right angles. I put this over here. I've got some of these for you. You can just, each one of you can play. Please take one of each and pass on. The chairman will have it last. 5 minutes, yeah. Well, this is a very amazing. This was designed by a mathematician at Harvard in 1928, Arthur Stone. We made more of them than anyone else in the world. Here is a piece of paper which can just rotate. Insects, start with insects, frogs, snakes, eagles. And butterflies are insects. It's a food chain over here. Insects are eaten by the frogs, frogs are eaten by the snakes, snakes are eaten by the eagles. And this is such a, you could put any kind of cycle over here. This is the rain cycle, the water cycle. Sun is the source of all the heat. It's the sun's heat which leads to evaporation of water. We get clouds. Clouds bring rainfall. Once it rains, all the reservoirs are depleted and the sun is back again. And if you had just an A4 size of paper like this, in 3 minutes, you could just fold this. This is called as a flexigon. We made this film about 4 years back. Last year, the Polish Academy of Sciences dubbed our film into Polish. Because everything which we do is in the Creative Commons, no one needs a permission to use it for non-commercial. In a month, 500,000 viewers of this particular film. It just shows why do the greatest mathematicians come from a small country called as Hungary? Because there is something in the culture there, the way maths is taught. Amazing. No glue, no scissors, just a piece of paper like this, a world-class model accessible to all the government schools. This requires vision, not grants, not money. Well, in the end, I'm just, and one thing more, this is something very interesting which I like very much. This is not our design, but nonetheless, no, this is half a A4 size paper, and you make a scale model of the skeleton. You see the skull, you see the rib cage, you see the pelvis, all the things. It's very nice. We have very few biological models. This is one of the few. Very nice. Well, in the end, I'll just tell you one small story, another minute or so. We make a dozen caps using newspapers, which are very popular. This is Sachin Tendulkar's cricket cap. You know, if one child makes it, it's a peer pressure. The whole class wants to make it. Half a newspaper. And it's like a geometry laboratory, because you're folding paper, you're folding all the angles and quadrilateral angles which you talk about in theory. But this is, of course, famous now as the Anna's cap. Anna stole it from us, I must tell you. Because we've been making it for the last 20 years, half a newspaper. In the end, a short story is called as the Captain's Hat Story. अगर आपने इस कहानी का नाम ना सुना हो, तो टोपी शंकर एक जहाज के कप्तान थे, पानी के जहाज के कप्तान थे. A ship sails very slowly. There are many passengers in the ship. Often they get bored. The first few days are fun, but then they all sees the एक नीला समंदर दिखाई देता है, ना कोई दरख्त है, ना कोई पक्षी है. All of them become bored. They become seasick. टोपी शंकर बहुत होशियार थे. उन्होंने सारे पैसेंजर्स को देख कर बुलाया. And he said that you sing and dance, and I'll provide you with good food and drinks. Topi Shankar had a suitcase full of caps. And the first day he'd be wearing a huge cap. It's like an umbrella cap. It would protect the captain from the scorching sun. Very clever man. At night, when the passengers go to sleep, he would take the same cap and give it one more fold. And the second day, he would be wearing a kind of this is a fireman's cap. Firemen wear a kind of designer cap because this is the spinal cord and a very vulnerable part of the body. And they have to, very hazardous circumstances. They've got to go into a burning house, and if some rubble falls, it must protect the spinal cord. Second night, he would take the same cap and give it one more fold. And the third day, this is like a Robin Hood cap. It's like an explorer's cap. Third night, two more folds. And well, I come from Maharashtra, very close to Pune's Mumbai, which is the famous film industry. If you've seen any of our Bollywood films, the policeman, the cop, wears a cap like this, and it's called as the Pandu cap. It's been catapulted to international glory. So this is the Pandu cap. So four caps: the huge umbrella cap, second is the fireman's cap, third is the shikari cap, and fourth is the Pandu cap. And we must not forget that Topi Shankar, after all, he was the captain of a sea-going ship. And now every one of us is enjoying the journey very much, and all good things must come to an end. And there is a storm. There is lightning. And there is the sea is on fire, huge waves. And what can a poor ship do? It can rock and pitch along with the waves. And a huge wave comes and slaps the aft of the ship and knocks it down. And the passengers are terrified. उर्दू में कहावत है कि बला अकेले नहीं आती, मुसीबत अकेले नहीं आती, छप्पर फाड़ के आती है. अब एक और लहर आती है और इसके अगले हिस्से को भी ऐसा थपेड़ा मारती है कि वो डूब जाता है. जहाज के टुकड़े टुकड़े हो जाते हैं. जहाज समुद्र की it starts to sink. The triangular portion of the ship is called as a bridge, and a third huge wave comes and slaps the bridge and just knocks it down. जहाज डूब जाता है. टोपी शंकर का संदूक था जिसमें तमाम टोपियां थी, वो भी डूब जाता है. टोपी शंकर लुट जाता है, कुछ नहीं बचता उसके पास में. देखिए, एक फटी पुरानी बनियान या लाइफ वेस्ट बचती है. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
All these people, Anil Sadgopal and many others, as a progressive movement for teachers' education, why we are not able to make impact on teacher training?
So I'll tell you why. Shay, one thing, and which, this program spread to 1,500 schools. Over 100,000 children in Madhya Pradesh, one of the backward states, because sometimes you have very progressive bureaucrats in backward states. And then came the DPP program, World Bank funded, and which was the Hoshangabad science was a total threat to the DPP, because this is homespun, so cost effective. The entire political class, from the left to the right, saw money there. It was shut down. It was a goal. It was said that it's a goal scored by the Congress, because it was the Congress regime at that time. It was just shut down. So it brings us to a much larger question about education in politics. As long as you're doing it in one school, two schools, state governments are very happy. They have a bouquet of experiments to tote around. But once you work at the mass level, you are a threat to the state. Any state, irrespective of who is in power.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta, for that very interesting, educative and inspiring presentation. We now move on to the challenges of science journalism in India, and we have V Jayan here. He is a science editor with Telegraph daily newspaper, published from Kolkata. He has earlier worked with PTI, Deccan Herald, Vigyan Prasad and Down to Earth magazine. Jayan, yeah.
Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Professor Ramurthy and Palla, for giving me this opportunity. Basically, I'm going to talk about, science journalism from practitioner's point of view, the kind of the obstacles you face and the kind of, the times and what trials of a science reporter. When we talk about science journalism in India, I would say, in the professional way, it has been around for the last 50 years. Probably Surendra Jha was one of the first science editors. The thing is that even if you look at on the internet, you won't see even a single article on him today. There's only one article which is mentioned. Something, 1981, he has signed a document, rather, many people have signed on scientific temper. That's the only document available on him. Of course, there was an interesting article written about him in Reader's Digest when he passed away in 1997. That's it, nothing else. Nobody remembers about him. The second one is a mentor for most of us, Padma, me, and some other science journalists, Dr. K.S. Jayaraman. Probably that's the only journalism school, hands-on journalism school, which ever we ever had in this country. And I think almost half a dozen people who are still writing on science or doing science reporting. They are from there, if not more. Now, everybody talked about a problem. We don't cover enough science in our newspapers. Is that correct? We all believe in peer-reviewed research. If that is the case, this is 6 months from April 1st, 2008 to September 30, 2008. This many articles, they've looked at 37 newspapers. It had 5,385 articles. Are we complaining? Times of India had something like 1,450 articles. That's about 1.6 articles per day. But the problem here is, most of these stories are from foreign agencies or syndicated articles. Another thing is that most of these stories are also used as filler stories. Not even, they're not really bothered about, nobody is looking at the content. It's not that they have chosen that story and gone into this. We have almost all the newspapers have something called dark edition, which actually goes to various places, far-flung cities and all that. They have to go to press around 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, depending upon the place they're located. The newspaper has to go. Science articles, because I worked in a news agency, I know, science articles from Reuters and AFP, they come very early in the morning. So there is a demand always to push science articles early in the morning so that, it can get into inside pages of the newspaper. So they fill the page, they're happy, printed and packed and dispatched to the destination. Now, I find it very intriguing. If you look at Hindu, which has the highest number of science correspondents, probably I think, maybe outside many of the European or America, they're standing at, they're ranked at 10th. And in 180 days, they have covered 214 articles. Well, the paper I work for is still further down at 20th. My senior colleague, G.S. Mudur, will have a heartbreak when he sees that, in 180 days, he has only covered or written 47 articles. He'll definitely going to have a heart attack. That's the kind of thing, when you look at, this is also, there are problems with this because I don't agree with the number. That's another matter. But this is the kind of articles we have. Yeah, you get to know what European scientists or American scientists do rather than, somebody working in India. Well, science is, of course, has a universal nature, but aren't we interested in knowing what Indian scientists are doing? That is a problem. We don't get enough opportunities to do that. Isn't that the one way we can actually get people attracted to science, children? Don't they be interested in knowing, what is happening there next door laboratory? Well, we have about 90,000 dailies and magazines registered as registrar general of newspapers. Of course, most of them, not all of them are working. They're still not being printed. Maybe some 10,000, 12,000. That's the maximum now we have. And of course, we have 400 news channels. But do you know how many science correspondents we have in this country? I can actually count them on my fingers. That's it. Maximum 20. I'm not talking about, there are of course people working in vernacular press, I don't know them, but then I'm talking about the English press. 20, 25 max, that's it. Well, if, like I had the fortune or misfortune of being one of this, the first batch of science communication in this country. I passed out from that. We were 8 people in that batch. I was the only person who was actually gone for science journalism. Others, of course, I'm sure they would have had an interest, but then never, for whatever reasons, I think many of them decided that they don't want to do this because, it's a lot of problem, or maybe it's a lot of drudgery, going around looking for a job. One person has gone to the bank, and many people, they've moved into different directions. I think I haven't come across anybody who has, except a couple of people, who have passed out. This course in Madurai Kamaraj University continued for 5 years. I haven't come across anybody who has become a science journalist, at least in that from my alma mater. 1 or 2 people, of course, have. That's it. And apart from that, there is no, except one Dr. Jayaraman, or maybe Mr. Jha, I don't know, there is nobody to do any hand-holding for science journalism in this country. If a new trainee, anybody wants to come forward and say that, look, I want to be a science reporter, probably, I think his chances are limited, because the very first day he has thrown into the fire, and you have to compete with like Pallav Baglas. That's like if you're getting a newspaper job, and if you want to do something, you have to really get out there and do your work. But then somebody has to take him through to that kind of rigmarole little bit, so that he can be trained, he can have some sort of confidence that he can get on with that. Many people start doing it, then they find that, okay, political journalism is better, they'll move on to the sports, they want to do something else, not science. And accessing information. We all know that the science, we access, most of us get our stories from peer-reviewed journals. How many of us are actually going through this peer-reviewed journals on a daily basis for looking for stories? I doubt maybe 10. Out of this 25, maybe 10 people. I don't think even that many people are really looking hard for stories. You get exciting stories if you go through scientific journals. And most of the time you have to go through the titles, then you find the abstracts, then you write to the scientists and they get the paper. It's not, it's very difficult for a daily science reporter to do this. I find something in the morning that I'm going to do a story. Okay, there's an interesting article, paper I found. Then I have to get the paper, then talk read the paper and talk to scientists and talk to some other experts, like to ensure that what he says is correct. It's not a daily, it's very difficult to do that. But then rewards are really, really quite exciting in the sense like when you get to do, I recently did an article on Coorg is a microcontinent. I'll tell you how did I get that article or that paper. It appeared in a journal called Gondwana Research. I find that article around 4 o'clock on a Friday evening. I write for a feature page. I look after a feature page. It comes around Monday. Friday, 4 o'clock, I get this title of the paper. I wrote to the scientist. The scientist is in Beijing, Indian scientist who works for the Beijing University of Geosciences. Within 5 minutes, he sent me the paper. So he told me, look, you have only 1 hour time. After that, I'm going to go off to sleep because I have to take a 4 o'clock flight to Nanjing where I'm going to give a lecture. So within 1 hour, I read the paper. I mean, I had to because, it's a geology which is not my subject. I went through the paper and got back to him, asked him questions. And then I can't go back to him because he is going away. So whatever I had to ask, I got the answers. Then now I have to look for someone who actually can help me to tell me whether it's correct or not. I mean, whatever, of course, the claims can be made by anybody, but somebody has to verify it. Then I was looking around. There's nobody doing work on that way microcontinent, or nobody is working on Coorg that way, like geological, the rocks in Coorg. Finally, I found somebody in Bangalore University called M. Jayananda. I called up, I didn't have a number. I tried calling up Bangalore University to see whether I can at 6 o'clock in the evening. Nobody is there. Then I Googled again. So he's on a lean to Delhi University. Luckily, it's a luck would have it. Delhi University generally keep people's telephone numbers, mobile numbers, email addresses on their website. I found him at 7 o'clock in the night. No, what I'm saying is not that explaining that, that story was an exciting story. It says that 1.2 billion years ago, Coorg was a microcontinent which came and hinged onto the Indian landmass. How do they know it? The rocks in Coorg is 3.7 billion years ago old. And Indian land, there was a major geothermal event in 2.5 billion years ago. This Coorg rocks weren't affected. So that's how they came to the conclusion. So what I'm saying is, this is an exciting story I can tell my readers. But then you have to really take some trouble. But nobody is helping people or science journalists to take you to that level. Like sort of you are looking for stories. How do you look for stories? Who are you going to what are the people who are going to? What kind of people you should be talking to? This is the problem. So I don't have to tell again and again about how difficult it is to get something out of scientific community. Well, shall I tell you another story, small story? 3 weeks back, 1 month back, CRI, Central Rice Research Institute, came out with a paper. It says rice paddy fields, the rice fields, low-lying paddy fields don't release methane. Of course, they do release methane, but they are carbon sink, not carbon source. How do they do that? They looked at all the carbon getting into the soil and getting out of the soil. Now, of course, I spoke to the scientists. The thing is that I want someone to tell me whether this is correct. So who do I call? The first person I can think about is ICAR has a UNFCCC coordinator. He takes care of ICAR's all the UNFCCC things. So he knows he should be the person in charge of climate change, as far as ICAR concerned. So I called him up in IARA. He works as a scientist in IARA. He says, look, I can't talk to you. You have to talk to my director and get his permission that I'll talk. I said, look, I'm not asking about the research you're doing. I'm not even asking about, like administrative matters in IARA. As a, the ICAR has appointed you as a UNFCCC coordinator for ICAR. Why don't you talk about this? No, he didn't talk. Then I wrote to ICAR DG saying that this is what is happening. It's another matter. I got someone to talk to me and all that. But then I thought I'll take it to the ICAR DG. I wrote to him. Till it's almost 1 month, I haven't got a reply from him even today. I told him, look, this is the matter. So I think the bureaucracy also, in a way, scientific bureaucracy also, in a way, play a role. As I said like earlier, that the cutthroat competition, where there is no professional body for science journalists in the country. There was one, which has, it's as good as not there. Because of the cutthroat competition, that, when you have a professional body, you can take care of things and you can talk about problems and you know how to, help youngsters who are getting into the field, but that doesn't happen. As I said, he has to compete, he or she has to compete with Pallav Bragla or G.S. Mudur from the day one. It's very difficult. Most of the time they're answerable to the editors. The editor might say that, look, why are you doing? Why don't you do something else? This is some of the things I've already talked about, this where to look for stories and all that. Okay. Well, I talk about scientific illiteracy. It's an illiteracy from the scientists. They actually don't know how media works. As I said, the newspaper, the daily paper, if I'm writing for a daily paper, okay, he might have his own problems. We are writing about his paper. He will tell me, look, you contact me next week. And we have to, once we are pitched for a story, rather, told our editor that, look, I'm going to do a story today. He will give me one more day, perhaps. Third day, he'll say that, look, you do something else. Don't do this. So I don't have that kind of time to spend on this, on a particular story. And science journalism is completely different from science communication because we work on completely under, as I said, this kind of cycle, the daily cycle and weekly cycles and all that. And I just want to tell you one more thing. Science is not just, science journalism is not just cheerleading. It also involves analysis, reporting controversies, and we also ask questions. I remember when EduSat was launched, I was working for a new magazine called Down to Earth. I had a cover story which asked, what are we going to do with this? We have no software content for this satellite. In 2010, CAG comes out of the report saying that was a, there are whatever, that the money was not spent wisely. I'll tell you another example. The kind of the troubles we have. When I was in Down to Earth, we did an article. This is about Department of Atomic Energy. There was an article in which I mentioned that an Indian reactor requires this much fuel. I got into trouble. Why? It's a classified information, fine. If it is a classified information, it shouldn't be answered in Parliament. 10 places it said, it's a classified information, we won't be able to give you information. 11th place, it said that, okay, this much fuel is required for 220 megawatt reactor to be run. I used that. I got a call Luckily for me, there were two authors. I mean, two of us were working on the story. I was leaving Down to Earth and going to Deccan Telegraph. So my colleague had to actually depose before a parliamentary consultating committee just because of this. This is in 2006. Not very far ago. If you look at the science communication course, this again I'm telling you from my experience, our courses are really pathetic. I don't think it can actually train anybody to become, not a communication, I'm talking about journalism. It doesn't really work. If you look at Anna University MSc Science Communication syllabus, you'll see that. There's nothing inspiring or sort of, it doesn't tell you the trade. I mean, it doesn't teach you the trade. And what journalism, what communication are you talking about? We are still talking about folk media. I'm sure it's relevant. But then we have gone beyond that. And we need to know what science is, how science is reported, how science news is, science ideas or story ideas are selected, which it doesn't do. Thank you so much.
Floor is open for, yeah.
I'm really very surprised and disappointed that journalists are facing so much problem in getting information out of scientists. This is something which I had not understood and I didn't know. But this is very bad situation. I mean, I can imagine certain areas where information is classified, but areas like agriculture, veterinary sciences, health-related issues, some vaccine development, this should be all very open and people should write about it and discuss it and so on.
No, that's the problem.
How do we correct this situation? Maybe there should be an article written by science journalists to see how pathetic the scientists are in passing information.
So it doesn't work, sir.
No,
in fact,
we have to offend people sometimes to get to the...
So we do it all the time. We actually do it all the time.
But it doesn't make any difference.
If we did that, you would not be able to access them in the future and you would not be able to make his living.
Absolutely.
Why is the scientist, for him is not an option. For us it is an option.
Is it that they are not sure about what they are doing?
Well, I don't know. See, ICR scientist or somebody working in IARI, as Dr. Gupta said in the morning, he is controlled by this laws, right? In the sense like all the personal or whatever things, civil rules. So he doesn't want to talk.
Because the directors want to be the conveyors of the message.
No, absolutely. No, there are many times we got scientists are telling us, look, if you're doing a story, please quote our director also. I mean,
So there you are.
I think it's a sociological issue the scientists have to confront.
absolutely, yeah.
Why is it that we are not willing to talk to or communicate? Is it because we feel that we really need to know the power structure which gives me the money and I don't really need to communicate science to the people because people don't matter?
Yeah.
So I think what is in fact the fact the scientists have not been able successfully to communicate on GM and atomic energy. Can we take the negative out of it and say, well, it's a task of every scientific discipline to be able to communicate all the time so that they have the credibility when they go on controversial issues then to also able to carry their point of view. And I must say, atomic energy, of course, because they're also in the business of bomb making, so it's not atomic energy.
Yeah.
So, that's the other problem. And as long as they don't separate the bomb making secrecy from the energy secrecy, I think we're going to have problems. Like 220 megawatt, everybody knows, today what the fuel should be, but you won't get it because it's classified. Now, this is absolute stupidity only because bomb making is involved in atomic energy.
Yeah, I think maybe because, at that point in time, we are actually trying to say, or rather, don't want to tell the world that how much uranium shortage is there in the country.
Except when you want to end the US nuclear deal, then you want to shout it from the rooftops, right?
I think we'll have two last questions, one Mr. Gupta and Mr. Parsarthi. Yeah.
I'd like to make one point and one question.
Yeah.
Point is that why scientists generally don't speak. You rightly said the government rules. As per the Government of India rules, only the Secretary to Government of India and the Minister is empowered to talk to media.
Yeah.
Nobody else. And there are dreaded conduct rules, right from the British days. So that is one reason. Another reason which I found is that in general, journalists are looking for not this scientific matter but the science news. The news value item, scientists may not be ready to talk. Like, as you said, how much of uranium is there, how many, what is our country's resources and all that, which is maybe sometimes it may be a sensitive information.
No, I'm not talking about that. That information I have to dig out, I'll dig out. I mean, I've done that. Right. But then there are other things you can talk to me.
I think it's a complete mistake to say that there are conduct rules and so on. Please violate them, get prosecuted, then we'll change the country. But if you're afraid to do that, then you won't change anything. And I don't believe it's true.
Okay. My question to you was, you talked about competition among
Yeah.
it's not clear to me whether it is competition among the journalists,
Among the
journalists,
journalists, among the
science
journalists.
journalists, or among science journalists with rest of the journalists.
Among science journalists.
But then they, in case that is so, then there should be a lot of articles coming out.
I mean, see, not many science journalists are there, you know.
Yeah.
So that you don't have that many volume. But then they are. I mean, like, I always want to do the story first, right? So because tomorrow my editor is going to ask why that story has appeared in Times of India before you did. So I'm answerable to him. So there is always a competition.
Then I think you should tell the positive things also. Past 3 years, I think, you have approached me half a dozen times.
Yes.
On no occasion, I have
Absolutely.
failed to give you information. I have talked extensively about Kudangulam.
Yes.
And regarding this fuel business, I don't know who told you. I would like to know in confidence, about the tonnage of, this all, there's nothing classified. All this material is available.
Sir, in Parliament question, it's written.
Let me continue.
Yeah.
See, this is a vast ocean. BRC or our system is a vast ocean. Now, I can tell you, I spent 50 years there. It is my firm conviction, out of experience of quite a few people, that messing up with journalists is considered as a hazardous occupation.
Yes.
Simply because we are not sure what you will report. See, this is mutual. And I remember, I tell you a typical example. The Kudangulam reactor was getting delayed, and there was a story that the water is a hostile fluid. If you leave it in a metal container of water, it definitely attacks water, there will be corrosion. It is known. Now, somebody wants to know about it. Now, there is always a fear, can I tell that? If I tell that, what will happen? Depending on who it is. Now, my past, I was the Secretary of the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. Now, if I tell that, definitely it will have more voice for various reasons. So I should be sure what I should tell. So I asked for a couple of minutes, I checked with people, and I explained to them it was a big story. So it is again, it's an individual initiative, and he was telling that you should be an evangelist, violate law. You can't expect that from everybody,
No, Dr. Parsarthi, one thing is, if you want, not positive press, press to cover you objectively, you need to talk to the press, without which it doesn't happen.
I think we can carry the discussion over lunch. We have 2 more presentations to complete before that. Thank you, Jen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now move on to the next presentation by V Padma.
Good afternoon, everybody. Professor Rammurthy, Dr. Balasubramaniam, Pallab Bagla, and a lot of friends and colleagues I can't keep naming, but I'm very delighted to be here because I have been interacting with most of you at some forum or the other. I'm especially happy to be at NIAS because NIAS and this particular organization, SciDevNet, that I'm talking about, have had some old ties. When the South Asia Gateway was still being conceived, the founder director had in fact visited NIAS. Couple of NIAS scientists were on the advisory panel of dossiers as we produced them in those days, which are not there now. When I set up the gateway, then I came here and I interacted with a lot of scientists. I'm very happy to come back here again and give this presentation. I also have a confession to make. When I'm no internet expert, I started my professional career on the good old Remington typewriter. And when this job was offered to me, I told my editor, David, that, look, David, I'm not an internet expert. He said, don't worry, nor am I. Most of us are not. And then I reasoned that this the same QWERTY keyboard I'll be using my own writing abilities. How does it matter whether it is the internet or a print medium? What it also shows is how extraordinarily naive I was about internet technology, but it is just as well. Sometimes ignorance is bliss and you happily go forward not knowing what you're in for. Okay, I'll begin by explaining the rationale that went behind SciDevNet. The idea was that science communication is extremely important in society, and the key task of science communication is to empower individuals to participate in the dialogue between science, technology, and society, because we have been talking about scientists communicating to science journalists, but let us accept this, recognize this fact that neither the scientists nor the science journalists are operating in a vacuum. We are both part of a bigger society, and what we do has to be relevant to the larger society. In particular, in controversies on science-related issues, science communicators need to ensure that the positions are grounded in the current state of scientific knowledge. This is all the rationale that went behind conceiving this website. And in the specific context of developing countries, the application of scientific knowledge is at the heart of social progress and of development process. See, here we are distinguishing that social progress and development process need to go hand in hand and have to be in parallel tracks. And the reason we are focusing on developing countries was that in international fora, there was actually no platform where science of all developing countries and rather development-related science issues were written about. It was considered unfashionable, it was considered low IQ, it was considered infra-dig. What New Scientist and Nature and Science and all in those days reported on was mostly about science from developed countries and maybe a few emerging economies once in a while. The next point is that such knowledge will not reach the heart of development unless it has been effectively and appropriately communicated to those who can put it in practice. And therefore, we need accurate and accessible scientific and technological knowledge. Here, I would like to again highlight this accessible point, but what is the whole point about having information and keeping it locked, classified information, or our directors don't permit us to speak or some reason or the other, but we're keeping all that information locked away somewhere, then what is the whole point? People should be able to access this information. That was the rationale that went behind setting up SciDevNet. And okay, I'll just skip this a bit because of time constraints, but basically it is like any other news outlet. It has all these things you would expect in a news outlet. But this was the unique point about SciDevNet. It was a triangular arrangement between nature, science, and TWAS. These three organizations came to support this concept of the need for news and information and analysis on development-related science from developing countries by science journalists in developing countries and of developing countries. The articles are all free. It's an open access concept. We only request please acknowledge them to SciDevNet. At this point, I'd like to just say that in my presentation, while I'm talking of SciDevNet as a case study, I would just like to go into a slightly parallel track that Again, SciDevNet itself was not happening in a vacuum. Internet was emerging as a major medium of communication, at least abroad in many countries, and sooner or later we had to catch up with it. We have this study from Pew Center in 2006 in the US that showed that 20% of all American adults used internet as their primary source of science news, and this was second to television. But if you looked at the data set out there about youngsters under 30 years, then 44% cited internet as their main source. Unfortunately, we do not have a very organized survey at this point of time in India, and I think our hunch and what little we have heard tells us that possibly in India at this point of time, print continues to be the main source of science news. But we do need an organized baseline, or where are people accessing science news from. And this young generation, possibly because they are all hooked on to the internet is likely to emerge at some later point as a major source of, science news. The internet has also changed some concepts of flow of information. We had a very linear model earlier. We had a scientist, and the scientist told the science journalist, and then the science journalist told, depending on print or audiovisual, the readers or viewers. And here the premise was that committed readers or viewers would come to your news outlet. But in an online world, some people will of course come to your news outlet because they're committed to it, but very often people stumble upon it. They're hunting for some other piece of information, and then the Google throws up something and they happen to chance upon your content also, though that will not have been the original reason, point of your search. And people are making use of this fact to create opportunities on the net to access your content. And I think we need not just science journalists, but also science communicators here, scientists here, to recognize if you are trying to update your websites, if you're trying to put out some of the interesting information or your research information out in the public, you need to kind of tap into these opportunities. How do we draw people and make them aware of what we are doing? The web's interactivity also offers newer ways of communicating science, because there's scope for comments, there's scope for, it can be a conversation, like the writer, the reader, there are other readers who will pitch in with their comments, and this interaction goes on. Some of it came by fax also, the embargoed information from abroad. Now you just click, you will find papers, research abstracts, laptops, mobiles, and all are revolutionized information gathering. And now I don't have to travel to every corner. That IPCC report, the latest one, the 5th assessment report, for example, was released in 3 installments in Japan and Switzerland and Germany. And you have webinars, you have live streaming of the press conferences. So I can sit in Delhi, I can track the press conferences. I can send through email my query to the people, the experts, the IPCC panel, and they respond. And this is how much difference net has made to the whole process of science journalism. I also just want to take you back a little into time, that when we make our internet efforts, all of it need not begin with a grand start. We began with such a simple format. You will notice that there is a very linear flow of news. You had to scroll down. And I would just like to draw your attention to the right corner. You have something called dossiers out there, where we produced more in-depth analysis on emerging topics. And to the left here, you will find that it is available in 3 languages: English, Spanish, and Portuguese. This is how it looked like. The material was grouped thematically into dossiers, and then it was also grouped into regional gateways. And yeah, we had an e-guide on science communication. You'll find our friend Pallab Bagla in the right top corner there. He contributed. So Pallab, don't disown it. There you are. And that's your face. Yeah, and this was how it was. We had the automatic news feeds and all this part of it. We used to build regional networks and workshops. We still do. Okay, while I was making the presentation, you will notice that there was this logo here. This is how SciDevNet began. This was the logo it was launched with. This is the new logo we have in the new website, and I thought I would put both logos to indicate that some aspects have not changed irrespective of what the logo looks like. And these are our regional networks, and we have these capacity building workshops. And as I mentioned, this is what the initial version looked like. Then we kind of improved on the second version. This is what you can now notice that the we put two columns, so instead of a linear format, you can see news here, you can see editorials here, you can see opinions, so you don't have to scroll down. Also, as the topics kept getting increased, we kind of reclassified them into topics like agriculture, climate change, health, and under these we added subtopics. So if you had health, and under that you had malaria, TB, neglected tropical diseases, and you could keep adding. I mean, this is how we modified our website. And okay, this is, and we also added blogs in the second version. For example, this blog from the European Science Open Forum. Now, blogs are a very key element that have emerged in the web technology. See, they help you write stuff, help you maintain conference diaries on interesting bits of information that would not make heartbreaking news. And this, for example, in the European Science Open Forum has one session always dedicated to how would Einstein have coped in the modern day pressures of scientists' workplaces. And they had one session that looked at would Einstein have been hired as a freelancer, blogger, entrepreneur. And they concluded that he possibly would not have been interested in science journalism as a career, but he would possibly have enjoyed freelancing for a specialty journal. But whatever traits they observed in Einstein, he liked communicating to the public. And this is the kind of value addition web ads, these kind of blogs. Or they had another session in another European Science Open Forum, would Einstein be on Twitter? You see, these are all taking cognizance of the fact that the working world also has changed for scientists, and they have to keep in tune with all these. The blogs can be informal or analytical. They have hyperlinks, and hyperlinks kind of draw the reader into going more in depth. If I have written climate change in my text and I provide a hyperlink, then the hyperlink will give you more information on climate change. So it kind of draws the reader into digging out more and more information, and the reader decides how much he or she will read about that particular topic, and invite them to explore further to construct their own narrative. And slowly, SciDevNet started getting recognized, not as, that is not a website born out of fashion or fad, but it is a serious medium of science communication. And here it is, a website on science and world development, a relatively rare example of a journalist-driven service that demonstrates the power of, in this case, he meant the web medium for rich communication. This is what our latest website version looks like. As you can see, now we have added a lot of pictures. I mean, it's a very image-heavy version. So it obviously is very different from the previous two versions. You will see on the right-hand top here, all this social media I've got in Twitter, Facebook, and all these. We have a mobile-friendly version now, and this is how it looks like. Irrespective of whether we like it or not, now these tweets are considered as important as news. This is an inevitable part of internet journalism. So the lady who sits tweeting now is in fact considered more important than me. Never mind if I went about setting this right, getting the information, mind you, not from just India, but whole of South Asia. But now the lady who puts Facebook posts and Twitter posts is considered very important. And that is how the net technology is progressing. We have to take some of these aspects into hand if we want to communicate and make our information accessible to a lot of people. Yeah, I would like to draw your attention to some of the value additions we have, and this is this practical guides. If you remember, I showed Pallab Bagla writing on contributing to our e-guide on science communication. They gave way to practical guides in the second version itself, except I could not show it in the second version, but now I'm showing it in this third version. These are, typical topics, how to communicate in an interdisciplinary team. Sometimes all of you are working in this is meant, some are meant for science journalists, some practical guides are meant for scientists wanting to communicate. Data journalism, how to find stories in numbers. Here, I think some of you would possibly be interested in this, what journalists want from scientists and why. This will explain some of the things even Jayan has been talking about, deadline pressures and all. And in fact, this is, I think, in fact, Dr. Jayaraman wrote this, how to be an investigative journalist. Those who know him know that this is precisely the practical guide he should have been writing, and he wrote it. And here are more examples of the practical guides, how to write about your science, or I wrote one on clinical trials was mentioned in the opening speech yesterday. This, how do you report progress of PR, how do you judge, and how to run a successful science outreach event. These are just some examples, not all. This is an example of how the web medium offers you scope to write on a topic and present information on a topic in a variety of ways. So I mentioned those 3 installments of IPCC reports. So this particular report I wrote on was on the 3rd report dealing with mitigation, which created a lot of controversy because of the kind of mitigation options they were putting for the emerging economies, and also some of the contentious technologies that were coming in here, which brings us back again to the science, technology, and society debate. For example, geoengineering is one option. I can just think of carbon capture and storage option. You will notice here there's again a feature, a Q&A we did with Dr. Pachauri. All this is the traditional format. But now,
Padma, can you help 2 minutes more?
Sure. This is, a multimedia format we have introduced, audio podcasts and audio slideshows. So the same climate change story from Bangladesh you're telling in a multimedia format, or how they're finding local solutions to climate change. And here we just launched in June an interactive map, how this technology can be used to present information in a quick glance. How many women researchers are there in a country, so you click on a country and then you get the number from there. And this, of course, are our podcasts. We launched an online debate on GM crops. This was again in June, where a panel of experts and viewers, everybody kind of pitched in with, we had a series of 6 opinions written by a panel of experts, and taking those opinions further, we threw open the debate on a web forum, and other readers and everybody pitched in with their views, and this kind of interactivity is there in this kind of online debate. And this is some of our new strategy: multimedia, social media expansion of regional operations, reaching out to development sector, developing a business model through syndication drives and media and training programs. And this is it. But basically what I wanted to say was, I don't think, even if at this point of time, internet does not appear to be the most major source of information of science news, it will at some point emerge as a leading, even if not the first, but a leading information, because the younger generation are all going online and you cannot stop that trend. Accessibility is one thing we have been talking about. I would like to, what are we journalists if we are not telling stories? Jayan mentioned about his problems. I remember going through all those hassles of, hunting peer-reviewed research, so it's not some irresponsible piece of science news I want to write on. It was on a low-cost desalination technology from Baba Atomic Research Center. I need to read the paper first to understand. Just based on an abstract, I cannot make a science news. 3 mails went unanswered. The 4th email, the scientist said, "Dear madam, I am not authorized by my seniors or superiors. I have forgotten to reveal anything on the said matter." Period. This is not uranium, this is not plutonium, this is not bombs. I'm not asking how much fuel do you need for a nuclear reactor. I was asking for a low-cost desalination technology. And if you say, I am not authorized by my superiors to say, reveal anything on the said topic or said matter, and that is the end of that communication. Please do not blame us all the time and say, you guys are not putting out information, you guys are not putting, and the only recommendations I would make is you please put out your research information on your institute websites. We need something. I made a major recommendation in the approach paper I gave. We need an Indian version of Eureka Alert that collates all the research abstracts and tells us what's happening in India. And we need a media resource kind of a base, who are the experts we could refer to for independent comment. We are not verifying whether your research is true or false. We want to know the context or the significance of that particular research from just a peer review that we are doing. We are also following a similar method. Can somebody else just comment, do you think this is very significant or do you not think it is a very new finding? We need that kind of a resource base. And without these, otherwise we'll continue where what Jayan has talked of for the next 10 generations will keep sitting like that only. Dear madam, I'm not authorized to reveal anything on the said matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Padma. Before I open for questions, just one observation. We have been talking about scientists either not being allowed to communicate or discouraged or not motivated enough to communicate. Well, in Science Reporter, I've been, for the past 2-3 years, I've started receiving articles from scientists. These are very well written articles, very lucid, very well presented. Strangely, these are all scientists who have retired. So I don't know if it's an indication of something, I don't know. Yeah, the floor is open for questions.
Yeah, Padma, I come from the other side. Here.
Yeah.
So I'm looking after the PAO functions in a research laboratory. So usually I face, the wrath of you people. So they say that you don't give us the information and all. We have some limitations, that's fine. All those things that you have asked, you have mentioned. My colleagues many times are not open to speak to the journalists. And the person authorized to be there will be busy. So in that case, I have an option out. What I do is, like Jawaid said, we have experts who have retired. So I will direct the journalists to talk to those people, get the information. I still get the mileage for my institute, but at the same time I pass on the information also. So this is what I'm trying to do.
Thanks.
So one way is, yes, there are people, there are some restrictions in the institute, but one thing I have noticed as a PIO is that there is no uniform policy for the institutes under CSIR or other things that the PIO has to do only this. Or a scientist can speak only on these matters and not on the other things. There is no specific guidelines or policies. And unless we develop that, probably science communication directly like this will be very difficult.
You have to, because as I said, online has made it very pluralistic. It has made it very participatory. You can't wish away. It's okay, you can keep out the so-called greens and the green pieces and all out of rooms. But they're there on the online. We have to be open now for a dialogue. We have to get engaged into a dialogue, and then come to a consensus, because that's the reason why we are getting bottled down in this resistance to, say, nuclear technology or GM technology, because some middle path has to be found, and if both are going to sit with rigid positions, then it will go on forever.
I think since several issues on nuclear energy I'm speaking, I'm now retired, so there's... I don't know that if such a reply has gone to you on desalination, because there should not be such a reply, because this is in no way connected with any of the classified information. And regarding what Mr. Jayan said, I can respond to that, because what is the title, what is the context in which you're asking, that's most important. Yes, so that was the context. The question of how much of uranium is required for a 220 megawatt reactor is not secret. I'm sure you are writing it for a different context. The context was to reveal the shortage that in 2006 that India had on uranium, and that was a sensitive matter, absolutely sensitive. So there is no reason why it should not be protected. So this judgment cannot be done by individual scientists sometimes. Yes, please.
No, I am not saying that the problem is not that. What I'm saying
No,
is...
I'm not saying, I'm coming to that. The point is that there is also a responsibility for the journalist to see that, okay, there has been a big shortage of uranium in our country. There has to be reduction in the capacity factor to a level as low as 50%. It was necessity. Was there any inquiry from anybody else in the whole journalist community that how did you overcome that? India is a country which did that with only indigenous uranium by a technique which is absolutely not known anywhere in the world. We have used depleted uranium. Uranium normally contains 0.7% 235. We have used depleted uranium to run the reactors at that time. And this is something which is unique. But there will be no interest. This is original. But there will be no interest because it doesn't sell. If you can sell something...
I'm sure, as a journalist, I would have been excited to write about
No, but you won't. Nobody would bother.
But then how do I know? How do I know?
You would not bother. Yes,
How will we know, sir?
Many a time we give this information, open out, it will be just, either it will be a one-liner in some 8th page of the paper, or it will be totally neglected. So this is what is our experience. So point is not just as simple as you are projecting it. But I admit that in case of desalination, there should not be any way there will be, this information is no way secret, even a fraction of it.
I'm sorry, we're not talking with her. But basically, if you keep that it's very sensitive how much shortage you have, then solving the problem does not become news because the problem itself has been hidden. My problem is, if there is a shortage of uranium, I really don't see it to be sensitive. Hey, I'll tell you why. You give the figures of how much you produce annually of uranium, you should, because after all, it's being done by various complexes around. And therefore, if I want to sit down and see what is your production, what has happened and so on, I can make a very good informed guess. So you're not really fooling the real world, which is your enemies. The enemy can figure it out. So the question is really, you're keeping it secret from the people of this country who don't have that kind of skills. I would suggest that actually making this public, and it is not sensitive to know that we have a shortage, would then give you the high ground to propagate how you have solved the problem. I don't know a problem. It doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. You have solved a non-existent problem because you never told me earlier. This is my problem. And I'm talking about, I'm talking about somebody who engaged in the nuclear issue. Yeah, so I'm not an ignorant journalistic knowledge person.
This issue has an international connotation. See, there is a pressure. There is no question that there is no pressure on India on reducing the nuclear program. There is a rollback kind of a trend is there internationally, and against that we have to protect ourselves. When we do that, and if you give if you guess and publish something, it's your guess. But from an official number that this is the kind of a total shortage that is available, and under that kind of a thing you are working, it would have definitely damaged our position in the international environment. And 2006.
A couple of points. One, this uranium shortage business. It was well aware to many of us through the reports from the electricity grid how your reactors are performing. It was not hidden. When
it was over-publicized.
Hang on, so let me complete. And I'm not fighting with you on this. the Department of Atomic Energy was not giving that number, it's absolutely correct. But when you needed to, it was given out so that the Secretary of State in the United States of America can justify the Indo-US nuclear deal. The numbers were given out in large, big, bold print by the Prime Minister's office. I have those releases with me. Prabir referred to it. I followed it very closely. So it is bits and pieces of information given out as the department wanted. So it's not that it was not inferred. It was very clear to many of us that our reactors were not performing to the level it was. It was very, very clear. It was not being officially confirmed. That was the only level. The second point, can I complete? Pardon, sir? Yes, I'm aware of that, sir. I'm aware. I report this on a daily basis. The second point I differ from Padma, Jayan, and many of my own colleagues in the journalistic community. And in my opening talk, I did say that I never take no for an answer. The more you stonewall me, the more relentless I am to get that information. The more BARC will keep information away from me, the more I will get there to get the information. I am not talking of strategic assets. Strategic assets, I am the first person to try and keep the information away till it is perfectly required. I am totally happy in keeping that information. It's a national interest. But any other information, I don't give up. I am relentless in the search for information.
But on this point, Pallav, I just want to mention one point. Since you have reported so much on the shortage of uranium, how this was solved was never an inquiry from you. It has not come anywhere in print.
Sir, you solved it through the Tumlapalli mines. You solved it through the alkali leaching processes.
No. Alkali leaching is different. Even this was with the alkali leaching from that's a completely different plant, not that. What you are referring to is that depleted uranium was used by completing a completely different reactor physics operation is a very important and very novel approach. And this was not done anywhere in the world. But this has never found a place. And we are not there to beat our drums and publicize. It's not for that. Since you have investigative work, investigation for anything negative, you are very perfect. Investigating anything positive, you are not there.
But Dr. Banerjee, you can't have it both ways.
No. Dr. Banerjee, then you're creating the biggest dualism, that the scientific truth needs the journalist truth to make it truer. Then that's the real target of this conference. And no, because in a strange way, analysts become case study. You have to be clear that at one level you can't be so aggressive, and at another level you got to say, oh, we'll only tell you what we are interested in. Because then you only become a political interest.
I think we can carry over the discussion sometime later. We are running woefully short of time. The last presentation in this session is on the role of internet website, on social media as an emerging platform. And we have presenters, Sandhya Sekhar and S Sudhira. Sandhya is a PhD from Center for Ecological Sciences and a master's in science journalism from the University of Lincoln. Sudhira is a PhD in ISC and is now with Guppi Labs. Sandhya would be presenting here.
After all the discussion now, talking about social media could be looked at in both ways, more appropriate or maybe inappropriate. I hope to convince you that it is an appropriate tool. So let's see how successful I am. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I know that social media is not yet viewed in a very positive light in India, but again, I hope to change that. So I've titled this Breaking Out of the Ivory Tower. By ivory tower, I of course mean the academic world that I have been a part of, which I am semi-part of now. A lot of conversations have been going on about different tools that people can use for communicating science. And yesterday there were a lot of mentions that, in fact, you don't really need a communicator. The scientists can very well engage directly with the public. And I'm here to say that social media is cheap and best, as we Indians say, a cheap and best method for scientists to engage directly with the public. So this is something that a lot of us are familiar with. It's the science news cycle, explained in a parody in a comic that is popular with a lot of the PhD students, that is the PhD comics. So research comes out and note the p-value. It's p is 0.5 and you've written the research and you say given C, assuming D, under E, so on and so forth. There's a university press office which says for immediate release, scientists find potential link between A and B, and then newswire organizations, Eureka Alert and such pick it up, and the internet writes about it, and there's a whole bunch of comments, and it gets on TV, and so on and so forth, and finally your grandma is wearing a strange hat because of the research, whereas you were really not saying that. Well, this is a parody on how the science news cycle works, but there are certain elements that here that we can look at. One is the various intermediate routes that science takes before it reaches your target audience, which is the public at large. And social media is one way in which scientists can engage at each level and be part of this conversation about your own research. So another angle that I want to give is what public generally perceive about scientists. So this is an experiment that the Fermi Lab undertook 10 years ago, but it's still very relevant now. So they took a bunch of school children to visit Fermi Lab, and before the students went, they were asked to draw a cartoon of what they think a scientist is. And the students said, I think as a very dedicated, crazy, talks quickly, constantly gets new ideas, he asks questions, can be annoying, and he listens to others' ideas and questions them. That was what the student thought first, I think class 9 or even younger, class 8 maybe. And after the visit, probably she's seen a lady scientist and she says, I know scientists are just normal people with a not so normal job. Scientists lead a normal life outside of being a scientist. They're interested in dancing, pottery, jogging, and even racquetball. Being a scientist is just another job which can be much more exciting. It's a complete change in perspective. And I picked a fairly extreme example among the things that the students had written, but the point remains that the general public at large probably thinks of scientists as someone like this, unless there's someone in the family, who looks normal like you and me, and they know that, oh, scientists are just, normal government employees or whatever. So, again, going back to this engaging with the public at large, social media as an effective toolkit. What is social media? It's an internet-based application through which you share information. Either you've generated the information or is information generated by someone else. But the point is it's going from one person to a whole lot of people. It's not a linear flow of information. There can be interaction as well. And it's a platform where this dialogue and discussion can happen. The general perception that a lot of people have about, for instance, Facebook is that it's something that students log on to in the morning and end up wasting 2 hours before they know it. But it's not that. According to me, social media tools are tools, and it's up to the individual how you harness and use the power of these tools, because after all, they're disseminating information, and science is about information. So I can give an analogy which has been bandied about in this yesterday and today, that is the use of a PowerPoint. People have used PowerPoints, people have not used PowerPoints, and if you use a PowerPoint, you can use it to aid what you're talking about, or you can use it to distract an audience. Similar with social media. Yeah, so I want to ask all of you, so what will I get if I Google you? Let's face facts that right now if somebody says, oh, who's this person? They're not going to make phone calls or ask a telephone directory or even call Just Dial. They'll Google or Yahoo or Bing or whatever it is. But the point remains that search engines are the first option that people use to gather information. And taking off from what Jayan was saying or what Padma was saying, if I want to find information about some science being done, I would Google it, and what do I find? I'll find the lab from the US or the UK, even though it's google.in, and technically Indian links should be the one that appear first, right? Because of the geographical nature of Google searches, but that's usually not the case. What I'm saying is a simple web page. Yeah. So this is the web page of somebody called Michael Batty. Hang on, I'll just see if I can. Yeah. So I'll be doing this a bit so that, because it's nicer than a screenshot. So he has a website called Science of Cities with a whole lot of tabs about his own blog post, about he works on complexity in cities, so complexity fractals, network simulations. He has a list of books. He is active on Twitter, and he's 80. Yeah, so anybody can pick up these tools because they are simple to use. So that's about a web page of an individual, but I will be talking a lot from our own experience in the field of science communication, and I'm part of Gubi Labs. It's an organization website. Whatever you need to know about the organization is up here, arranged nicely in tabs, most common stories, and information about the organization that you may want to know. And the thing is, there's so much space that you can express all the kind of thoughts and the various threads that you're following easily. So a simple web page. A lot of institutes, they already have all their web pages up and running. All you need to do is contact your institute's website administrator and add just nias.in/ and xyz, and that's it, you're done. And you don't even need to pay for a domain name. An individual like me, I went and bought sandhyasekhar.com, and then I designed a website and put it up there. Here, all the machinery is in place. All you need to do is have the content that can go on the website. And I just wanted to mention about search engine optimization, continuing from what I was saying in the previous slide, that if I Google you, what will I find? So there's a set of algorithms which you can administer very easily, because these tools like WordPress and Weebly enable these search engine optimization. So later on, if somebody Googles your field of interest and your name, your website should be the one that comes up first. If there were PhD students here, I would have said everybody would Google you, so ensure that the first link that appears is respectable. With this audience, I don't have to say that. Yeah. So it's not like somebody should Google and get your Facebook page of your friend's birthday party or something. They should first get to know what your research is about. And a website also provides space where if you have a software, you can have software help pages. If you're doing some new method of analysis, you can have analysis discussion forums. So collaborations need not any longer be the traditional manner of having to meet someone at a conference and then continue from there. You can have it, the internet is the platform where you can have these open discussions, even from anonymous people, which in a way will also improve your ideas, help you crystallize them further. I think all of us who've taught have experienced that the best way to crystallize and internalize a topic of your interest is to explain it to someone else in simple terms. So the social media and the internet as a platform gives you an opportunity to do that at a everyday basis. There's another thing that is true. The world talks about you anyway on the internet. You might as well join the conversation and have your own little space where your voice is heard. And it's not like people are talking randomly about various things and your voice is not heard anywhere. And you can have an up-to-date list. Academically, you can have a list of your latest publications. You can have updates from conferences and meetings, like what Padma was showing about. You attend a conference and it's not like you can write an article about it somewhere. We put it up as a blog post so that people know that what you heard at a conference. And you can advertise professional opportunities and upcoming events. I know that postdocs are out looking for the labs that they can work with. Have your information so that the best minds can find you. And committees searching for suitable candidates. I'm sure the first thing that they do is to Google you. And as I spoke about earlier, feedback from an anonymous audience, I think, is one of the virtues of the internet. Right, so apart from talking within the ivory tower, you can also break out of the ivory tower, because I think almost uniformly across the world, irrespective of the country, science is poorly understood and poorly appreciated as well. There is this beauty and integrity to the scientific process. All of us who've been part of it know that thing that goes on in your mind when you come up with a research question and you design your project and you go through with it till the end. It's a nice process. Let's explain it to others and let's tell everyone what we are doing, right? And even about the science itself, that's first the paywall, because you have to pay enormous amounts of money to access a lot of these papers. And even if you get the paper, there's what I like to call the jargon wall. It's so filled with terms that even people in the same field sometimes cannot understand what the other person is saying. So if you want to come out of this paywall and the jargon wall and tell people, a lot of the research across the world is publicly funded. And so if you want to tell taxpayers what you did with their money, an easy way to go about it is through social media. And we have spoken already about education, but education is for the next generation. So what are you going to do to educate the current generation about science and the latest developments? They were in school, there was no genetically modified organisms and 2 egg and 3 parent children and any such thing. So how are you going to do that? Definitely newspapers are a way, but a continual engagement, the best way to do is through social media, according to me. Yeah, so I think this is the rather mysterious beast that I'm sure a lot of you have grappled with and wondered whether should I get on Twitter or what is so special about it. So I'll just quickly walk through. This is my Twitter page. Actually, I'll just, this is my Twitter page. And so it just shows, Twitter, the basic principle is you follow people you find interesting. So I follow a lot of people, a lot of them are science communicators, scientists, Indian news agencies. And so the kind of tweets that I will get, each thing is a tweet. So the kind of tweets I will get on my wall will be things that I am interested in, because I'm following only the people I'm interested in, right? So I have something from my Seed Conservancy. This is a fellow science journalist, and she's written an article in Science, which I can go read. So in this page, I'll get a latest information in my field that I can imagine, and internationally, not just within an Indian context. But it is a flood of information. It's an enormous flood of information. So there are ways to navigate it. You can use hashtags. Of course, all the main hashtags now are about FIFA. There's also some World Music Day. I didn't know it existed until now. So, you can use these hashtags and you'll only get tweets about that hashtag. So it's a mine of information, and it is an art to get around the information and only find what you want to find, but it comes with practice. One more thing that Twitter, it's difficult, is that it allows only 140 characters. So to fit what you want to say into a 140 character, not word, 140 character tweet is an art, but again, it comes with time and it becomes an enjoyable process after that. So I'm sorry for the back and forth, but I just thought a live website is nicer than a screenshot. Right, so one thing that a lot of people, academics who've gotten onto Twitter abroad find is that they have an enormous virtual department rather than the traditional academic department with, say, 20 or 30 people. They have this virtual department where all their colleagues are online and you can have discussions. You can have fence-sitters on your discussion who are reading what you're writing, and they may suddenly come in with a new comment which can just change your way of thinking. It happens sometimes. There's even an extreme example of somebody during Hurricane Sandy having an entire discussion class on Twitter because students could not make it to the classroom. And it became a class which engaged a lot of the audience, because apart from the classroom itself, because that's the nature of Twitter. And I've done this myself, that you want to know what is the latest analytical method in a particular field. The best way you can get it is through Twitter, I'm telling you. Because 140 characters and somebody said something about it is a starting point, and you can go read a blog post, etc., etc. So the latest information is on Twitter. And even if the person is publishing an article about that analysis method many months in the future, you can be a part of it from the time of its inception till its fruition and be part of all these valuable discussions. And there's also a hashtag called ICANHasPDF that journalists can use. If you tweet with that, somebody will send you the actual PDF. So also, if you don't have time to navigate through Twitter every day, you can customize that I want to Twitter digest every day or once in 2 days or twice a week. And it tells you what were the most read things on Twitter over that period of time. Saves time, and you followed people you're interested, so that Twitter digest is invariably very interesting. Facebook has always been regarded as something that people use to stay in touch with friends and put up photographs and generally do a lot of, waste a lot of time on. But there is an official Facebook, and this is the official Facebook page for Gooby Labs, the organization I'm part of. And it's a small organization. We've been tweeting for, say, 4 or 5, 6 months now. But the kind of engagement that you can generate with Indians on Facebook, it's something amazing, because Twitter is not so much caught on in India yet, but Facebook is extremely popular. And Facebook for all mobiles after that came up, whether somebody has a smartphone or a simple phone, they can still have Facebook on it as long as they have internet. And that opens a nice portal in which you can share a lot of information. And this is the administrator's backend of this page. And you can see that over the last week, there have been 13 new people who've liked the page. And we did a book release recently, on Thursday, this 13-year-old boy who wrote a book. And that particular post, some 650 people have read about it. You get all these analytics, and you get a nice sense of how popular what you're doing is, and what is the people's reaction to something that you've done. I agree it's a section of people who have access to internet, who understand English, but I think it's a beginning. One example of how successful Facebook can be in the dissemination of science is this particular webpage called I-Love Science. I'm censoring that word because it may not be appropriate for this audience. But people can Google it if you're interested. It's called, short form is IFLS. And it started off as a bored British undergrad student, and she now has 16 million likes on Facebook. And there's something that she does very effectively. She just puts out one nice image and a very short summary of that latest science. So instead of, this is a lot of the time, like the day after Nature comes out or something, you can just go to this page and these are the highlights of this week's Nature. And she's also cultivated that confidence in her audience, I must add. And so she categorizes according to very nice open categories and one image and just few lines, and it works very well. So with social media, it's not just that you have something to share and you write it and people will look at it, or it takes some time to gain that a slight humorous twitch. For instance, she started, despite traveling in schools, fish usually are regarded as unintelligent. It's a quip, but it works. It draws people in and you'll continue reading it. But so about posting with an image, it always works better than without an image, and a short summary of the larger article in your Facebook thing generally motivates people to read the article. And moving on from the more traditional ones, YouTube has taken the world by storm many times, and I've taken the liberty of putting your page or your YouTube channel up. But as Dr. Arvind Gupta was also mentioning, that it's a very effective medium, because from YouTube you can have your video there and you can embed YouTube in a web page, and that becomes a very effective storytelling method. There's also an interesting thing called MailChimp. A lot of institutes send out newsletters, which are usually static and in a PDF form. Excuse me. But MailChimp is a software which allows you, it's a what you see is what you get editor. So whatever you put and what you see is what you get. So you can have unlimited length, short articles, longer articles. It's not like it can have all kinds of links in the middle. You can have PDFs in another link and put it up here. So it gives a lot of flexibility. And another thing is you can send the newsletter to how many ever people you want. There's no restriction that you can have targeted audiences. So this is my urban ecology group. This is my amphibian ecology group, and you can keep sending out newsletters with these customized lists. Another thing that with the internet as a platform, not just social media, but one can engage with is collaborations. You can, from before you go to a conference, during a conference, after a conference, you can keep engaging on social media. You can collaborate on Google Docs. I've had the experience of me writing a paragraph and a colleague writing another paragraph at the same time on the same document, and it works. It's a very efficient way of going about it. There's a reference manager called Mendeley, where if I'm collaborating with 3 other people, all 4 of us can sit together and have a common library of papers that we can all refer to instead of everyone reinventing the wheel. And there's LinkedIn, a professional networking site. There's academia.edu and ResearchGate, which are like the academia equivalent of LinkedIn. Then there's Google+, which is like Google's attempt at Facebook. Then there's Feedly, which is one place where you can follow all your most preferred magazines. So if you see my Feedly, you will have New Scientist, SciDev.net. So it's just one place. Instead of you physically going to everyone's website, you can have it all in one page and you can access it. It may sound like I'm spending all my time on social media and not doing much else, but that's where a social media management tool like Hootsuite comes in. And what Hootsuite does is something very, it's a simple thing. It queues up all the social media things that you're in control of. So I handle Gooby Labs tweets, my own tweets, Gooby Labs Facebook page, and my own Facebook page. So what I do is in the morning, so I say, okay, I want to send 5 tweets a day. Let's see what's interesting. And in the morning, I can sit and queue up these tweets in the morning. And Hootsuite will decide when to send out the tweets or the Facebook page, depending on your history. So earlier, if a tweet sent at 9, Facebook pages usually work very well at 9:30 in the morning in India, because that's when everyone comes to work, and they log on to Facebook. So it works. So in that kind of a situation, Hootsuite will say, okay, 9, last time from your history, I know that 9 in the morning works, so let me queue it for 9 in the morning. So you don't have to do that extra layer of thinking when you wonder, should I put it before lunch, after lunch? This software tool takes care of all that for you. Right, so it's not, of course, not all hunky-dory, so I wanted to add a cautionary note as well. There is intellectual property issues, and if your paper's under embargo and you're happily talking about it, your publisher may not be happy. And of course, the internet never forgets, so you need to be careful about what you say, not diss people too much if you would regret that later on. If you won't regret it, doesn't matter. And it's also good to have very distinct personal and professional spaces online. So I have a Facebook page for my friends and for a professional and a Facebook page for my own personal reasons. And another thing is, if an institution is adopting social media, you cannot really treat it as an extension of the public relations office. It's more a tool with which you can continuously engage with the public and be, instead of being reactionary, engage with the public throughout, so that, such situations where people are questioning you and all can be avoided a little. Right, so I just wanted to give a couple of extreme examples of how people have used social media. So there was this time when a group from Smithsonian was working in Guyana, and they collected a lot of fish, and they didn't know what these species were because a lot of them were new species. But then they needed to catalog all the species and give it to the export authority before they could take the fish from Guyana back to Smithsonian. So they used Facebook. From Gooby Labs, we have this app called Frog Find. It's based on a book on amphibians of the Western Ghats, basically frogs and toads of the Western Ghats, by somebody from the labs. And you can download it. You don't need internet to use it. Download it on your phone, and if you're out in the forest and you see some frog, you can use this as a key to find out what species it is. Sudhira has it on his tablet. If anyone's interested, you can take a look later. So, yeah, I'm getting there. So there are games. For instance, this Galaxy Zoo, where a lot of people can log on and help astronomers figure out patterns in the with galaxies. Then there's another game called Fold It, which I kind of enjoy. So you solve puzzles and figure out how proteins fold into their particular conformations. And I mean, it's in a way citizen science, right? Because people are contributing to figuring out a new protein structure by playing a game. So after saying all that, I'm winding up by saying what next and suggesting to you to get online. And I'm not saying jump in straight away. What people sometimes do is be a lurker for a while, just figure out how things work, and then you can start tweeting or posting on Facebook or whatever. And if you still think it's a little too demanding on your time or resources, then reach out to people for help. There are people like us who can very well help out. And it is part of this endeavor that we were speaking to Pallab Bagla about, and we are in this final stages of setting up this sort of media center for IISc, where we plan to help IISc scientists engage with the larger public, and we hope that social media can be a part of it. Not immediately maybe, I think it requires some change in thinking in people's minds for that to come to fruition, but it's a beginning. So I agree it's challenging. We all have spoken about what all the challenges are, but I think with some careful planning and execution, it's possible. Thank you.
Escape from social media. That ad revenues is what drives social media. Just as media is driven by ad revenue. 50% of the digital economy today is Google. Okay, that's where it is. So we are looking at complete domination of the media in the future by social media companies, and therefore subsidizing them. And just one simple statistic. I think the English speakers in the world, including us, is about 12%. 55% of the global internet content is English. So we are going into digital colonialism as well to social media. One should be clear about that as well.
Thank you.
Join them happily or do something different. Exactly. Fight the
Much more popular in India, at least. Hootsuite itself has a very nice analytics tool. So it tells you how many people clicked on your URLs and what did they say, what is the level of engagement. So there's a difference of somebody just viewing a post and actually clicking a link and going and looking at that web page. So that differentiation is also made in Hootsuite itself. So that's a very powerful tool. There is also like lots of free online platforms. I mean, I have a link somewhere, I can send it to you. But yeah.
What you are using for Google Labs?
Hootsuite. Yeah.
You said you were going to help Indian Institute of Science in developing these communication skills. I want to wish you all the best, because if we succeed in one model, others will be, hopefully they will catch on, and
hopefully.
So good luck to you in your efforts.
Thank you. That is the imagination. Yeah, thanks.
I just wanted to ask you, there's a problem I've been grappling with the South Asia page of SciDevNet.
Yeah.
We find these thousands of likes on Facebook. Is there any software or anybody who can help us know who the hell on earth are these people who are liking us?
I know what you mean, but then the closest you can say is geographically localized people. But apart from that, you need better tools to investigate where they are from and all. So there's a nice tool called Stat Counter which helps you look at it, especially from a website. Yeah, but
beyond that, we don't know who is that
I
person
know.
who's liking.
With Facebook, that is a thing that you don't know who exactly is liking. Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess you're talking about geographical area. It only comes as where the most likes come from, but not the entire geography of the audience.
If, say, I put up a link from SciDev on my Facebook page, so SciDev is also registering who's reading that article. So from that you can figure out, because of the URL always goes back to the SciDev thing and the analytics are on that URL. So even if I've shared it on Facebook and somebody else has read the article, SciDev will register it. And using a tool like StatCounter, you can say, oh, how many ever likes from India, so many from Italy, whatever.
Yeah, we can have the last question. Dr. Chadda, yeah.
Is it free of cost, that tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a question, it's just a comment, because I landed up in a lot of problems about 5-6 years back when I started on this Facebook and these things. So my wife and my friends have a lot of complaints. My wife says you come at 9 o'clock and sit on the Facebook and then you don't see it all. So the best solution I found was I put her on the Facebook. So this is one of the solutions one can think of. Yeah,
Thank all the panelists for their wonderful presentations. I think the presentations evoked a fair bit of dialogue, and we will close here now. Thank you all for your patience.